Insearch. Thank you very much for coming today to the UECA Feeding Fest. I'm just going to introduce today's speaker, Robert Puppet. He's from CQU Sydney. Rob has been teaching mainly direct entry courses at CQU Sydney for over 4 years and recently worked for a year in the Academic Learning Centre as an academic learning advisor and associate lecturer. He also had a previous role as an ELT education consultant for a major publisher. He's fascinated by the process of learning and teaching and has developed many innovative methods to deliver that process. He holds a BA in Communication, Media and a Master of Creative Enterprise and Creative Practice, but really prides himself on being a generalist, a jack of all trades. So please welcome Robert.
Thank you, and good morning everyone. Thank you for coming to my session. And it's sort of going to be the opposite of what Pamela gave us this morning. Almost no theory, just some not quick and easy tips, but things that I've learned working both in LCOS, especially academic English, direct entry, and working as an advisor for students at university in the Academic Learning Centre of CQU, Central Queensland University. They have a town hall campus. It's actually their second biggest campus, almost as big as their Rockhampton main campus. Right, this came about because I think everyone has had Elvis moments in the classroom. What I mean by an Elvis moment is when you've spoken to one of your students and you've mentioned Elvis and they've looked at you and gone, who's that? It's like Elvis Presley. Perhaps some other times have been the Beatles. I've had that one as well. They don't know who the Beatles is. Maybe that's just showing our age. But definitely Elvis moments. But remember, it's all context. Does anyone know who Fan Bingbing is? Anyone in this room know who Fan Bingbing is? Well, Fan Bingbing is a very, very big actress in China. She was in an X-Men movie, so she's starting to make that jump across to Hollywood. But to my Chinese students, she's the Angelina Jolie or whoever the latest Hollywood superstar is. What about Shah Rukh Khan? We heard of Shah Rukh Khan, yeah. There's a few, well, you've got 2, 3. Shah Rukh Khan, he is actually the wealthiest, or according to some sources, the wealthiest actor in the world. He's like the #1 Bollywood film star. He's been, if you saw his face, you would know who he is, so you can Google that later. He is worth something. I was doing some sort of lesson where he's worth about $600 million, and the next person under him is supposedly Tom Hanks. And I was, the students didn't know who Tom Hanks was. Actually, a lot of the Chinese students knew who Shah Rukh Khan was. So we all have Elvis moments. So these Elvis moments have come along in various ways with my students, and this is where this presentation came from. So if you want to, just remember reinventenglish@gmail.com. I can send you copies of the slides. I can send you a Word document that lists all the tips, so you don't have to be madly scribbling down. So this is not anything really to do with LCOS. This is actually more to do with study skills. Some of these things are going to be good. Hopefully, I'm thinking out of the 25 tips, I'm hoping you'll get a good solid 5 tips out of it. Some of you, it'll be obvious. Some of the tips will be obvious to some, and some won't be so obvious. So hopefully, we'll learn something. And if there's something that you would like to add, hopefully that might be of value to everyone, please do. All right. So as Gregor said, last 4 years teaching predominantly direct entry English, as well as working in the Academic Learning Centre. In the Academic Learning Centre, I would do embedded lectures, go along to engineering, business, human resources, IT, and give lectures about paragraph structure, essay structure, referencing, things like that, as well as working in the as an advisor one-on-one with the students, and they would come down with their essays and or assessments and stuff. So it's very similar work to what we do as English teachers, except I was just helping the students at university. Actually, a lot of the students were former students of mine from English who obviously didn't listen to what I'd said in class and then had to come down. So it was good. So I saw a bit of a divide between what we do in Ellicos and what happens at university. You can't always bridge that divide. You know, we've only got 10 weeks often, or a very short period. We do the best we can, but still I think there's always improvement. All right, so I've put this into 3 broad overlapping categories: the library and the university, internet and communications technology, and processes and strategies. Let's begin. All right, so we'll be fast and furious. All right, first one. The magic number is 428. Does anyone here teach the Dewey Decimal System to their students? Yeah, 1, 2. It's not part of any of the academic English courses from the other universities. We all know what the Dewey Decimal System is. All right, so as a way of trying to get my students to teach themselves to become independent learners, I tell them that the magic number is 428. Who could guess what 428 might be? English. That's where our books are. Learning about English language. So as you can see, 400 is languages. 430 might be French, 440 might be German, 490 is everywhere except Europe. An old system. The Dewey Decimal System, I've spoken to students. I said, do you wherever you live, Hurstville or Auburn or whatever, there's usually a local library. And if you go to 428, because all the libraries are based on the Dewey Decimal System. But if you go to this link, also 135 other countries use the Dewey Decimal System or base their system on the Dewey Decimal System. And funny enough, most of the students that we teach, Chinese, Indian, actually have the Dewey Decimal System. They're just not used to it. I mean, our students don't use libraries as much as we did when we were studying, so there's a bit of a difference. All right, that's Dewey Decimal System. File naming conventions. File naming conventions. This is something actually I learned in the corporate world. Everyone's seen at the bottom of a document that says something, the different, at the end it might have V2 for version 2. There's some sort of file naming conventions. Because I send a lot of my information via email, I try to have my own file naming convention, which I'm going to improve on, because now that I was looking at this one, my system's not so good. I would have something like the course, EAP2. Then I have Block A or Block B, so the 10 weeks down to the 5 weeks, then the week 4, then the day, Tuesday, then the skill, writing, and then get it down to paraphrasing or hedging language or whatever the particular. So coming from the biggest to the smallest. And it's also just, I think it's good just for, your personal records. My USB, my documents folder, my USB disk, my document, it's a mess. I wish there was, I have to have file naming conventions for my life, because I've got a lot of documents that I need to get into order. All right, so file naming convention. Has anyone used file naming conventions? Yeah, every university has them. This can help not just yourself, but your students. Using a textbook. Now this only came up recently. I was speaking to a student, and and I was saying, oh, did you, the student said, I couldn't find anything in the contents. And I said, oh, well, did you try the index? The student said, what's an index? And it was just one of those, Elvis moments. It was like the index at the back of the book with it's like a more detailed contents. And so I sort of realised, well, with our digital generation, they don't use textbooks a lot, or they're not used to them. So I was helping the bookshop at CQU close down. They were going online and helping them get rid of books and stuff. And they were giving the books away, but they couldn't give this book away. No matter how many copies there were, Statistics for Managers just wasn't a hot seller of free books. So, I mean, we ended up with, boxes and boxes of these. I didn't particularly want to throw them out. I'd worked in publishing. I'd seen how much waste there is. As soon as they're a new edition, they throw them out. And I said, well, maybe I can give them away to some charities or wherever and stuff. But not this one. This one, I had so many of them. But it's actually, even though it's a very boring topic, it has some good structure, or how do I explain? It has contents, it has an index. And I was looking at it, the chapters have summaries, whether that's at the front of the chapter or at the end of the chapter, case studies, glossaries, etc. And so I created a quiz based on that, where they could go through the textbook, physically thumbing through it, answer questions about the context, they can look at the page with all the details for referencing, and so they would just get an appreciation for it. So, I don't know, maybe in your library there might be old class sets of textbooks. I also, to go in with the Dewey decimal system, often when they were doing research, for example, I think marketing is 658 in call numbers. So I also try to tell them, when you're in the area of 658, all the books on marketing are going to be there. Like, we've all gone to libraries, we've found our books, but we've sort of scanned around the area because, there might be, general marketing books, but then there might be marketing for IT companies or marketing for sports events or whatever specialisation. But that's what I say. I say, while you're in the area, have a look around. I always talk about the text in the libraries. You can get a good general textbook. And as a colleague was recently pointing out, in libraries aren't as overwhelming as the internet for information. So, good for me to start. Right, so, number, find out the conventions using old textbooks. The internet versus databases. Obviously, students always tend to start with Google. And I say, well, there's Google, that'll give you just a really broad range and not anything specific. So maybe you want to try Google Scholar. And I believe the Microsoft version is called Microsoft Academic. But I always tell them as well that the best is actually the databases that the university have subscribed to. So if you get onto Google Scholar at our university, maybe they find a document that they want to use, but they click on to the database. They're going to have to either pay a subscription or maybe a one-off fee for that article. But it'll be linked to CQ, because on the CQU network, CQU have paid for that database, because that database is maybe to do with IT or the courses that are very popular with our students or that we provide. So I say, Google's good, Google Scholar's better, but really databases are the best. And, we've all seen various databases. Is that familiar, the Elsevier logo? Yeah. So, there's also, the other thing is they can, one thing I always point out when they get onto these databases is the cite function. So there's usually somewhere that you can click on and it says cite this. So they can reference later. It might not be in the format that's needed for their assignment, but it's got all the information that they can rearrange for the references that they need. CQU is mainly APA referencing, APA and then Harvard. I don't know if it's the same at your institutions. There's some others as well. There's Turabian, which is sometimes called the Chicago style of referencing, and there's also Australian Guide to Legal Citation. But essentially it's mostly APA, some Harvard, and some specialist referencing. And speaking of academic articles, using academic articles, referencing in text and end of text, getting them used to the format of an academic article, and especially things like the abstract and the executive summary, explain that you've got this summary at the beginning, and the cite functions as well. Perhaps things like you can download those cite functions in text, and there's specific software such as EndNote for referencing. I really don't know how to use EndNote. It's one of those things that I know it's also available. There's some sort of referencing tool in Microsoft Word. I actually don't know how to use that either. All right, so that's the library.